I'm Cynthia Bogart of the Daily Basics, and we're here today with Melissa Foster and Shelf Pleasure, and we are so excited to have our first online book club meeting, and I hope everybody's going to enjoy it. Any questions? There's a column on the right-hand side. You could ask your questions there. We have our very first book club from Long Island, New York, down there in one of our boxes. There are 8 gals who have been together for a long time, and I'm going to have them tell their story a little bit later. And Kristen Weber and myself. And I want to turn it over to our guest of honor, who is Melissa Foster.
Hi, everybody. Thanks for having me on.
Thanks for being here.
I'm happy to answer any questions that you have about Have No Shame or any of my writing. So, shoot. Go ahead.
Well, I'll start, and then if anyone has any questions, they can type them, and we'll read them to Melissa. And then we'll also give the book club, all you glamorous girls on Long Island, I'm also from Long Island originally, a chance to answer some questions as well. So first, Melissa, let's just dive right into Have No Shame, because we all read it and we all loved it.
Thank you.
And every one of your books that you write is so different, but they do have common themes of love and family, as well as very strong characters that walk right off the page. And I'd love to hear how you came about this idea specifically for Have No Shame, where the idea came from, just anything you can tell us to start about the genesis.
Sure. Have No Shame is one of my favorite books that I've written to date. And I felt like Allison's story was just one of the most important stories. And as you know, Kristen, as my editor, I had to tell that story. It was a story that I couldn't just put on a shelf, you know, and table it. I heard and felt Allison's story so strongly that I just wanted to get it out there. And when I was doing, I guess you wanted to know how I came up with the storyline. And I tend to write about things that are important to me. I come from a very big family and a very close-knit family in lots of different ways. And I was brought up to believe that that you never judge anybody from anything other than or by anything other than how they treat other people and how they live their lives. Their color doesn't matter, race doesn't matter, their personal beliefs in you know, their sexual orientation, none of that matters. That's the way that I was brought up. And when I look around in today's society, I feel like we've come a long way since the 60s, but there are still so many similarities that I feel like sometimes we have to bring up the past in order to move forward in the future. So Allison's story to me was a way to bring the past and how far we've come to many of the people who didn't live through that era, and maybe bring it to the forefront of their minds and help them become a little bit, hopefully, help them become a little bit more introspective about how they're treating others. And so I came up with Allison, who was going to follow her heart and go against everything, risk her family, risk the love of her father, who, you know, she was a daddy's girl, so that was really important. And she turned out to really surprise me. She was so strong in the end, and she started out so sort of wallflowerish a little bit. You know, she was the watcher. It was her sister who was the one who sort of took over. So that's how I came up with it. I did a lot of research. I talked to a lot of families. I talked to a lot of women, particularly, who grew up during that time in the Deep South, and took a lot of the story from their real-life events.
And it feels like that we've come so far from the events in the book, but it really wasn't that long ago. Did you have any personal experiences in childhood?
No, in fact, I was talking to my mother about that a couple of weeks ago, because I was born in the mid-'60s. Let's not admit that too loudly.
Have no shame.
Exactly.
I grew up, I'm Jewish, and I grew up in a primarily Catholic neighborhood for some reason. I have no idea why, but that's just kind of the way that it worked out. I think we had 2 African-American people in my elementary school. And so but there was never prejudice. You know, I didn't really encounter any of that until I was in high school, when people were sort of mean for different reasons. You know, but that's teenagers, not pockets of society. That was just kind of the age, I think, where they were sort of feeling out themselves and how far they could push things. So I didn't have personal experiences with that. And again, I grew up going to places like Provincetown in Massachusetts, where everybody is accepted for who they are. And so to me, the civil rights issues that happened back in the 60s were sort of the basis for how we sort of moved forward from there. But I didn't encounter it on a daily basis, but as an adult, I see it now on a daily basis. I mean, it's still there. It's not as prevalent, and people try to hide it, but it's there. And so my experience comes from my experience as an adult, not something that I grew up with, and not in the Deep South. You know, I'm in Maryland. I'm in the Washington, D.C. area. So, so that's as far as my personal experiences go.
But I mean, it feels so authentic. It feels like you really were there, maybe.
And well, you know, that's the research end of it. And when I write my characters, I have to feel them in order to write them. And this is one of the strangest things about me. In fact, I just posted about this on Facebook. I tend to act out a lot of my scenes before I write them, or I write them and then I act it out and then I revise it until it feels real. And the reason I do that is so that I can feel what that character was going through. And if that character is going to cry, I have to be crying. If that character's going to laugh, I have to be just rip-roaring laughing in order to know how to portray that on the page. So I know it's a quirk, I know it's strange, but you know, 10 minutes ago I was in the kitchen acting out a scene with my 14-year-old, and we were both in tears. We were laughing so hard. And it just made the scene come alive on paper. I could write it so much better than just seeing it flatline.
And I know that speaks to how real your characters feel, and you've mentioned to me many times that they all live in your head. I'd love to know how your husband and your kids, Melissa has 6 kids, how they all feel about competing with all the characters.
My husband is probably the most supportive man I've ever known in my entire life. I have an entire wall of men. Hold on a second. Maybe you can see it. Yeah. I have an entire wall of men over here. This one's my husband, but the other ones, of course, aren't. And my husband not only puts up with that, but he will tear out pictures of good-looking men and say, this needs to go on your inspiration wall. Wow. So, and the hardest thing for him, I think, is that he really, part of his job as a husband is to know all of my characters, because I talk about them like they're real people. So if we're sitting down over dinner, I'll say, oh my God, you have to hear what Kurt Remington did today, you know, for whatever book I'm reading. And now he's gotten to the point where he gets upset if I don't use the character's name. If I say, well, in Read, Write, Love, he says, no, 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 who are the people? So he handles it very well. My kids, my older ones sort of, you know, they cheer me on, but they've got their own lives, so they don't get too involved with it. But my younger ones, who are still here on a daily basis, they're 13 and 14, they pretty much laugh at me. I mean, they think that I'm ridiculous when I'm walking around the living room talking to my characters. So the competition for my younger ones is just kind of getting my attention when I'm in the middle of a scene. So if they come in and I'm frantically writing, you know, they'll stand there and they'll be like, okay, okay, are you done? Are you done? Are you done? And they have to wait until I finish that scene sometimes, and that's probably the most frustrating.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
Ladies in the book club, do you have anything to add? It looks like you all were reacting to that.
Yeah. We're very impressed with that. We're 6 kids. How do you do it?
How do you do anything with 6 kids?
Well, I didn't start writing until they were all in school. So the minute that I put my youngest on the bus for kindergarten was the first day that I sat down to write full-time. I waited 15 years to write. I wanted to write for 15 years, and for 15 years while they were younger and we were, you know, working full-time and raising a family and all of that, I just put everything on hold. I'm not one of those people who can focus in fits and spurts. I really admire the writers who can do that, you know, 30 minutes here or there. I can't do that. So I waited until they went to school. Once they were in school full-time, you know, their school time became my work time. And I didn't really go over that and claim my, you know, some of our family free time as my own writing time until the last, like, 2.5 years, when my youngest ones were old enough that they didn't really want mom around all the time. You know, they wanted to be on the computers with their friends or over, you know, having the friends over, that sort of thing. So it's really just, my writing has monopolized my time recently. And I'm a bit obsessive, so I probably really need a 12-step program. I laugh about it a lot, but I probably really do, because I'm just obsessed with writing. If I'm not writing, I feel like I want to be writing. So
I can attest to that with all the emails Melissa sends me all hours of the night, but it's wonderful. As readers, we can't get enough, so it's fine.
Well, Melissa, where did you grow up?
Here in Maryland.
Oh, you did. Okay.
And I spend all of my summers on Cape Cod, which is why you'll see a lot of my other books, like in my romance series, lots of them take place in Cape Cod because it's the place that I feel like I come alive. So for me, you know, you write what you know in some aspects, and that's the place where it really comes alive.
We do have some questions.
Can I just ask her a question along the lines of your kids? Do you have your kids read your books? Do they read them when you're done? Do they like them? Do they?
Well, let's see. I have a stepdaughter, and my stepdaughter started to read Megan's Way, and she put it down. She said it was too real. She said it was like listening to her and I as the mother and daughter in the book. So she wouldn't read that, but she read some of the others, and she liked them. We have 5 boys, and the boys aren't really into, you know, literary fiction, historical fiction, all of that.
Or romance.
See that face?
But I will tell you this, my 13-year-old, he just turned 13. When he was 12, I didn't realize it, but he was reading through some of my books. And what he would do is if I left it up on the screen, he would read through it. And he came to me one day and he said he wrote something for a class. It was an essay or something like that. And when I read his essay, it was amazing to me that a 12-year-old could write it. And I asked him how he learned to do it. And he said he had been reading some of my books. So he parlayed the descriptions of the types of things that I wrote, brought it over to whatever topic he was writing about. And that, there's no better kudos, you know, from your child than something like that. So I was really happy with that.
Nice. Very good.
And just a reminder to everyone who's watching out there, if you have any questions, you can type them, and we'll ask Melissa for you.
Well, we're gonna, because we don't have another.
We can't type.
We
for
can't
some
type.
reason.
No, you guys can ask all your questions. I'm talking to the people in the world who are watching.
For other people. Okay.
Yeah.
So then we were asking about the dialects, the 2 dialects. How did you
Come up with that idea.
decide to come up with that idea?
Okay. First of all, I'm the first author who ever did that in a book and offered it in 2 ways, in digital and in print. But what happened was, when I was doing my research, I talked to lots of people from the South, different areas of the South. And what you find is that different pockets of the South and different pockets of every place really have their own dialects. So I had to choose one, and choose the one that was most comfortable and felt the most real for Allison. So once I chose that, I went on to Facebook, and I thought to myself, I had a difficult time at the beginning of reading The Help. And it was just the first chapter. I had a hard time getting into it. Once I was into that first chapter, the dialect really helped me bond to the characters and brought them to life. But that first chapter was difficult. And so I knew that some readers probably had issues with that. So I posted on Facebook, on my fan page and on my personal page, and I said, you know, what are your feelings about this? And I got about 400 responses. They were split down the middle. I think I probably drove Kristen crazy with 100 questions going back and forth of, should I do it this way? Should I do it this way? And then I finally decided, you know, in today's day and age, I can give readers what they want, both sides. So why not do it? You know, and so that's how it came about.
So now, as an editor, did you, for the one that did not have the local Southern language, did you have to go in and like change it? I read the Southern version. I think most of us did.
Yes.
I read the Southern version. We started with the Southern version, and then Melissa decided to offer the other option as well.
And did you have to like go and change every different words and?
I did that.
Yes.
Yeah.
I did not do that. I just offered my opinion, which was stay true to your heart. But I always liked the Southern dialect. I thought,
Yeah.
I mean, Melissa's from Maryland, but it just felt so authentic to me.
Yeah.
It was very authentic. It really was.
Well, it's funny because I'll hear from people from different parts of the South, and they'll say, oh, that was the worst Southern dialect ever. And then other people say, I loved it. You know, it's exactly how I grew up speaking. So, you know, you can't please everybody. And Kristen is the best cheerleader in the world. She really is. And she is always so spot on with her recommendations. And when she says stick to whatever feels the best for your character, feels the most real, even if, to me, that says, even if 90% of your readers aren't going to feel like it's the right one, if I feel like it's the right one, it's the one to go with. And I was glad that I listened to Kristen with that and didn't just, you know, knock it out altogether or minimize it, because it was the most real for me and for Allison.
And I feel like you're never going to please all readers, so you have to please yourself, and then pleasing yourself will lead to pleasing everyone else.
Yeah, I agree.
And what kind of feedback have you been hearing, Melissa? Have most people been reading which way?
It's split. It's really split. 50%, I would say, right down the middle from the people who contact me and from the reviews that are left online. About half of the people read it with the dialect, about half of it read it without the dialect. And the most interesting thing to me about the dialect is that people are adamant. I mean, there are people who say, I will never read something with a Southern dialect. And then there are other people who say, if it's available, I only want to read the Southern dialect. So I was surprised by the vehemence of the readers more than anything else.
Wow.
That's great.
I do have a question here. Did you have any experience with biracial couples in high school or college and who had conflicts with their families?
Oh, with their families. You know, friends, sure. I mean, absolutely. You know, I've had friends throughout the years who have gone through that. And again, I grew up in such a just liberal, open family that it all seems ridiculous to me. I mean, so when my friends would come to me and complain about it, you know, I was not the kind of person who would say, who would coddle them over it. I was the kind of friend who would say, you know what, there are people who are going to be, you know, this is your family, they love you, so you expect that you're going to get welcomed more than anything else, but if they're acting that way, you need to grow a little bit of thick skin. If this is the person that you love, you can expect to see this, you know, tenfold from strangers. And you know, I would support them in any way that I could, but I'm more of a realist. I kind of lay things out on the line, and I do what I can, but I'm also a big mouth, so I have no problem saying to, when I was 13, I'd have no problem saying to a parent, this is ridiculous. You know, you're judging somebody by the color of their skin, you're willing to lose your child over who that child loves. I mean, come on, unless that person's abusing your child, you know, that's just a ridiculous stance. So, yeah, I kind of have a big mouth.
Like Maggie. You were like,
yes, I'm very much like Maggie. And Maggie, by the way, is one of my favorite characters ever. And I patterned her after Maggie Gyllenhaal in many of her movies because that's who I pictured. That's the personality, you know, that snarky, strong, confident personality who it really isn't afraid of much.
I'm telling you, every book we read becomes a movie.
Will it be a movie? Because
lucky,
most books
Melissa,
that
right.
we read become movies.
Well, here, really? Yay.
The extras in the movie, by the way.
I don't think we've read it. Eventually your book will be a movie.
It will be a movie, right?
I have some really fun stuff going on right now. There's a screenplay that should be done for Have No Shame within the next week or two, and they're working on the treatment. And the person who is working with the screenplay writer knows all the big names, knows Brad Pitt, knows, you know, all the big name actors. So we're waiting, you know, I'm waiting with bated breath, but we're waiting for her to finish the screenplay, finish the treatment, take it to the next step, see what happens. And then just, Kristen, I'm not sure if I even told you this yet, but just a day or two ago, I was talking to some people out in LA who are helping me with some other things, and they want to talk to me about creating a mini-series for my Love and Bloom, a mini TV series.
Wow.
For the Love and Bloom romance series. And I'm over the moon because the big thing that we talk about on Facebook is hiring models and actors to play the Bradens and to play the Snow Sisters and then having a big party so that we can all pretend that we're with all these people that we love in the books. So a mini-series would be absolutely fantastic. But that's what we're juggling right now. That's what we're playing with.
Well, we would love to be extras in any movie. The first book club to be introduced to you. Here we are, ready to go.
What's the name of your book club?
Oh, that's a very big question, but we've been together for 27 years.
Yeah.
Wow.
Holy cow.
Yeah,
we were a playgroup.
We were a playgroup, and then the kids there were too many children, so we ended up having this book club, and I think it's been 25 years.
Yeah.
And what's the name of the book club?
We don't really have a name. We'll come up with a name and we'll give it to Cindy and she'll let you know the name of the book club.
Yeah, that would be great. I would love to know what it is. And if you send me a picture of you guys all together, just hold up the book and I'll put it up on my website and I'll put it up on some
Okay,
got it.
Should we send it to Cindy?
Send it to Cindy or send it on my, whatever Cindy prefers. You can also send it on my, just on my email, thinkhappygirl@yahoo, whatever works for you guys.
Oh, that'll be great.
Yeah, I'll give you her email address, okay?
Wait, you have another question? Wait, you have another question?
Do I have time?
Yeah.
Okay. I was just curious because I haven't read any of your other books, but this book was told through the point of view of Allison, so first,
First person.
Reading that's a more challenging way to write a book, and I was wondering if your other books have ever been told that way, and if not, did you use any of your experiences with your stepdaughter? How did you get the voice of an 18-year-old?
Okay. Well, okay. So two questions. The first question is, do you mean the voice of an 18-year-old in Have No Shame, or just in general how I get my teenage voices?
That's the book we've read. I've read yours.
And Have No Shame.
Yeah. And Have No Shame.
Okay. So first of all, that's the only book I believe that I've written in first person. Isn't that the only one, Kristen? My other ones aren't first person.
Yeah,
it is very challenging. Yeah, it's very, very challenging to write first person because you want to avoid all the I. So, you're really pushing yourself to be creative on a different level. So, but that's I tend to write the way that my characters come to me. That one felt like it had to be told from Allison's point of view. So that's why that one's written that way. The other ones are all third person or omni. What is it considered, Kristen?
Yeah, the other ones have other narrators, but they're all in third.
Yeah, okay. And for my teenage voices, this is really embarrassing to admit, but I swear I am an 18-year-old girl in my head sometimes. It's really true. I mean, I am such a rebellious person by nature that coming up with the teenage rebellion side of things is much easier for me than coming up with that sweet daddy's girl, because I was never a sweet daddy's girl. I couldn't even pretend to be a sweet daddy's girl. So that was much harder. And our kids aren't, none of them are like that. They all have their own, shining personalities. And so I'm not sure. I think I just kind of watched people. I do a lot of watching. And then part of it is just conjuring up maybe what I would have wanted to be like if I could have been, because as I was growing up, I did have friends who were daddy's girls, and I was always very envious. I mean, even though I was tough and I was strong and I have 6 brothers, so I could keep up with all of them, and that was like more important to me than anything else. Like, I was the kid that they blindfolded and told to climb the mountain while they walked up behind me because I was afraid of heights. So, and I'm proud that I could do all of those things. But I spent a lot of my youth kind of looking at my girlfriends and going, oh, I wish I was feminine like that, or I wish that I was that daddy's girl. So I think a lot of it also stems from what I saw growing up.
Thank you.
Jessie, I think, has a question.
Oh, well, she was just talking about the daddy's girl. I was just thinking about the father in the book and that pivotal moment in the book when he says, okay, he gets out his gun.
Yeah,
on
Jimmy Lee.
And that was pretty dramatic. I can see that in the movie.
Yeah. I did like the way you wrote about the father-daughter here, though, and her respect for him and how she held back.
Thank you.
Ellie wanted to do, based on her love for her father and her admiration.
And his
Yeah, thank you.
love won over his bigotry.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've been asked to write a follow-up novel to Have No Shame because a lot of my readers want to know what happens next. I mean, this was an earth-shattering move. The mother's secrets were uncovered. Right. The father all of a sudden realizes that it's change your attitude or lose your daughter. And then the daughter up and leaves and goes to New York. So a lot of my readers want to know what happens next. And unfortunately, I've got a list of about 14 books right now that I need to get written in the next 12 months or so. So I'm not sure when, but at some point I'm going to be writing a follow-up to that, I hope.
We'd even take a novella or a short story.
I know. I'll get there. I'll get there. Right now I'm working about 12 hours a day. So I want to fit it in. There's so many other stories that I want to fit in, but I'm engrossed in this series right now, the Love and Bloom series, and I'm so I'm so in love with these characters. It sounds silly, but I'm so in love with the characters, the girls and the guys. I mean, male and female. I fall in love with both of them and in every book, and I carry them forward to the next book. And so it's hard for me to let go and just say, okay, kids, we're going to put you away for a month while I work on these other kids. It's hard to do.
Sounds like they won't let you go.
No, you don't let me go. I'm the girl who sleeps with, you know, my phone under my pillow so that I can get up and text myself when I think of something about my characters in the middle of the night.
Oh, that's great. Well, you look very relaxed. You don't look tired at all.
Thank you, thank you. I feel, you know, I don't get tired often. When I get tired is after, like, probably by the time I go to the Cape, I'll need about 2 days to recover. I think I've got 50 days. I worked it out. I have 50 days to write 3 books. So I'm averaging about 7,000 words a day right now, between 7 and 10,000 words a day. And it's a pace I like. It's a pace I enjoy, and it's self-inflicted. And it's like I said, I'm just addicted to it. I just love it. There's nothing else that brings me as much joy as creating these worlds and really being in them for a while. You know, these are like my invisible friends.
And is Kristen putting all that pressure on you to write 3 books in 50 days?
I don't put on any pressure on her. It's all self-imposed.
Okay.
You have to have a big...
Doesn't put pressure. Kristen's the best. She doesn't put pressure on me. She's ready for my work when I give it to her. Surprised when it comes in early. But no, she doesn't put pressure on me. It's really me putting pressure on me.
And you write them all on your treadmill? Is that true, on your treadmill desk?
Well, here, I'll show you guys. I have a treadmill desk, and I walk on it for 2 hours a day. I'm going to be 48 in June, and my legs won't let me do much longer than that. I don't know if you can see that. Am I showing you the desk or no?
Yeah, we see that.
There it is.
Wow.
Yes.
That's good.
Wow.
I walk on that. Oops, are you there? Okay.
Yeah.
I walk on that for 2 hours a day. I do almost 6 miles while I'm writing in the morning. Usually from 9 to 11, I'm on the treadmill desk, and that's 5 days a week. And then the rest of the time I'm sitting. I actually type faster when I'm walking. And I also have to have noise. So I have my radio on, my iTunes on, as loud as the house will let me, you know, until my office is shaking. And then I'm on my treadmill and I'm typing away. And that's when I'm the most productive. If I could walk on it for 12 hours a day, I'd be on it for 12 hours a day. Wow. But my legs won't take it.
I'm the most productive on my couch eating chocolate, so I don't know how we get along.
That's what you're supposed to be right now.
I have a question for Kristen. When is the baby due?
Oh, my baby's due in August, so I'm working right around Melissa's writing schedule. Don't worry.
I know, she's perfect. She couldn't have picked a better time. She works right up until I'm in the Cape, and then she's ready to work again when I'm back from the Cape. Perfect.
Wait, where do you go on the Cape, Melissa?
I stay in Wellfleet.
Oh, my brother lives in Eastham.
Really? We used to stay in Eastham. For the first about 15 years, we stayed in Brewster. We camped. And then we at Sweetwater Forest. Do you know where that is?
No, I'm not sure.
Well, it's a campground there. And then we stayed in Eastham for many years. And then about, I don't know, 7 years ago maybe, we found a little cottage community that we loved in Wellfleet. And Wellfleet has just become, like, you know, our favorite place in the world at this point. And we have all of the families in this cottage community. We know all of them. We all go up at the same time. So in my Seaside Summers series, a lot of the fun stuff in those books are things that happen with me and my girlfriends while we're at the Cape.
Very cool.
Oh, we'll read them this summer when we do like a little summer thing. We'll do.
Oh yeah. Oh, you'll love them. If you do that, you should read. If you don't want to read a whole romance series, then at least read the book Read, Write, Love, which just came out. That introduces you to all of the characters in the Seaside Summers books.
And there's a romance of main characters, so you'll appreciate that as a book club.
All right.
Yeah.
Anytime you want us to be online with you, Melissa, we'll set it up. My husband did the whole thing. We'll get the girls over here, and we'll be part of your little series of book clubs.
I love it. I absolutely love it. I meet with book clubs very often, and it's one of my favorite things to do. I love the feedback. Even if you have negative feedback, if there was something you didn't like in the book, I'm all for it. Tell me, because it helps me grow as a writer.
Right. No.
You ladies seem too nice for that. I don't know.
We're really not that nice.
Maybe it's the wine.
Yeah, the real question is, what kind of goodies do you have at this book club?
Well, tonight, it's usually just cheeses, dried fruits, desserts.
Depends on the book.
Hummus.
We
Yes,
change
we
according to
change
the
according to the book, usually.
Oh, that's great. I love that.
But I have a broken wrist, so I'm the hostess, and I couldn't do too much, so that's...
Well, you have to read a book about chocolate, and then you can have a big chocolate fest at your house.
Oh, thank you.
So I have a question for you ladies. What's your favorite genre to read?
Histories.
Really?
No,
That's me. Nobody else.
It's just one of you.
Yeah.
Historical novels.
English mysteries.
I love reading about the South, though. I do find it very interesting.
Historical, yes.
Historical
Historical fiction.
What's your least favorite?
Family dysfunction.
Fantasy.
There you go, write a book.
What's our least favorite?
Fantasy.
Science fiction.
No, I love science fiction.
Westerns. I know that's why we don't.
And how do you choose your selections? Do you take turns or?
Well, it's been like every time we meet, a different person has,
We go in order.
like, you go in order, alphabetical order, and then you represent like 2 or 3 books, and then we vote, and then the person who brought the selections does the research on the author and the reviews.
So we're different from some book clubs who just discuss. We do actual research and
That's
talk
right.
about the author.
We do research.
That's why we need to know everything
We want to know a little more about me.
We want to know what you discovered about Melissa.
I know. What'd you find out about me?
Not very much. Nothing. I live in Maryland, and my daughter went to Loyola, so I love Maryland, but that's all I know about you.
Oh, geez.
So, Melissa, I have a question for you. What's your favorite book to read? Do you have a book that you read every year?
Time to read.
A comfort book or
I read from midnight until about, usually midnight, sometimes 12:30, until about 1 in the morning. And I read whatever, I don't know, my husband's my big book guy, so he'll go to the bookstore and he'll bring me home stacks of books that he thinks look interesting. So I'll usually read that, or somebody will refer something to me. I did just read, I think I referred it to Kristen, Alice Clayton's book, Wallbanger, had me in tears. It was so funny.
Oh, really?
Yeah, it was fantastic, absolutely fantastic. So I would recommend that. But my favorite, I have a list of favorite books, but you know, sometimes I find that when you read a book at a certain age and then you go back to read it again 2 years later, you don't enjoy it. For me, I don't enjoy it as much. And it happened to be the time in my life that made me enjoy it, you know, or whatever age I was, I don't know. But I'm not somebody who can reread books over and over and over and enjoy them as much as I did. So.
Do you find that if you read a book, do you find that you're influenced by another writer's style at all?
I hear Kristen in my head when I read.
Not Kristen.
I look so innocent, but she makes me sound so scary.
No, what happens most of the time, this is so funny, and I tell my husband it all the time. What happens most of the time is I'll be reading and I'll find somebody head hopping where they change perspectives in the middle of a paragraph, or I'll see an echo of words, you know, 2 or 3 times over 3 paragraphs, something like that. Or I'll read something and it's not fleshed out enough, and I'll hear Kristen's voice in my head saying, you know, oh, we need to know who this is. It's still in the author's head, you know, something like that. So my enjoyment from reading, if I'm not reading somebody who's really a skilled writer, I end up critiquing the book more than reading it, and that's hard. It makes it really difficult.
Kristen, Melissa, where did you go to school?
College.
To college? Well, I had a very funky bringing up, but anyway, I didn't graduate from college. I did go to a local college, just community college here, and you know, and did very well. I had 4.0, but I have always been somebody who I just am very rebellious. I wanted to blaze my own path from a very young age. So I started a business when I was 19, was earning 6 figures by the time I was 20. And if you ask my brothers, they'll tell you I've done everything in my life based on sheer will. So while I can, you know, I had my first baby, I had Noah when I was 20, almost 22, so very, you know, pretty young. And at that point, I still took classes, and so as I took the class, I took a lot of writing classes actually that I really enjoyed. But I never went and finished my degrees, and most of my brothers have their PhDs, and they shake their heads, you know, at the success that I've found on my own, and they always say it's because I'm based on sheer will. You know, I just don't give up. I find what I want to do, and then I learn it on my own.
Now I have a question. When did you get published? When did you first get published?
I published my first book in 2009.
Oh, okay.
And I think you're having more fun than the PhD, so don't worry.
Oh, yeah. I know I am. I know. My brothers email me all the time and tell me how jealous they are that I'm allowed to have fun with what I do 24/7, you know, and they're researching and they're developing and they're doing all these other very wonderful, you know, very professional things, but they don't have as much fun as I do. So.
You're passionate. Yeah.
So can you talk about your road to getting published? How did that work out? How did you know where to go for, you know, to publish your book?
I had no idea. I am a total pantser, and I will remain that way until I'm 97. And I will fight being anything but that the whole time. But so when I decided I wanted to write, I knew nothing about writing. I mean, I knew how to write, but I didn't know anything about the publishing industry as a whole. So the first thing I knew I had to do was write a book, because if you don't write a book, you've got nothing to take anywhere. So I wrote my book, and then I did what you're not supposed to do. I picked up the phone and I called literary agents. You know, hey, I'm awesome. Publish my book. Kristen laughs because that's like,
I would be terrified if I got that call.
That's the one thing you're never supposed to do. And I know no boundaries with some things. Like I think people are just people to me. And once you strip away what their titles are, they're just like everybody else. So what I did was I loved reading Jodi Picoult at the time. So I emailed her and I said, I've written this book and I don't know what to do next. You know, how many pages do you think? No, it was when I started writing. I said, how many pages do I have to write for it to be considered a book? And she said 300. So I single-spaced 300 pages. I wrote 600 pages of my first book.
Funny. Oh my God.
So, and you know, no literary agent will look at a 600-page book, and rightly so. And so I ended up chopping that back and, you know, bringing it down to half the size that it was. And I did contact agents and the whole deal and went through submission process, but I decided to publish my first book on my own. And I self-published at a time when everybody frowned upon self-publishing. I mean, now everybody self-publishes. But in 2009, it was still one of those things that, you know, people didn't want any part of it. They thought there was an issue with it. And my feeling was I just want to get a book out there and see what the response is. You know, I wanted to see what readers thought of it. And very quickly, it didn't take too long, Megan's Way was my first one that I actually published. It was the second book I wrote, but the first one published. And it sold 100,000 copies pretty quickly. Wow. And then I talked to a director who wanted to make it into a movie. And so things just started rolling. I did publish my second book through a publisher, and then I published my third one through an imprint through a literary agent. But I took those rights back. A couple of years ago, I took those rights back and decided to just do it all on my own. And I do work with a literary agent who sells all of my foreign rights and that sort of thing. But the traditional publishing world is so stringent on what they'll publish that if they don't like the tones of they don't like the concepts that I enjoy writing. And I'm not going to change what I enjoy writing for a literary agent or a publishing house when the readers love what I write. So, I mean, I want to write what I love, and I hope that my readers love it. And luckily, the two have found each other, and it's been a good relationship, you know, readers and my writing. But every time I write something, you know, I'll talk with my literary agent about it, but it just doesn't make sense. They put out about 2 books a year through traditional publishers, and I put out a book once every 4 weeks right now. And so I don't see a reason to make my readers wait. I mean, you know, I've got 5,000 readers buying the book the first day it's out because they want to read it. So why make them wait a year? You know, it's ridiculous to me. So until there's a meeting of the mind.
Nobody wants to wait.
I know, nobody wants to wait. I know, but the traditional publishing world doesn't get that yet. You know, they're catching up, but now sometimes they'll publish twice a year, but they're so far behind what real readers want these days that they end up turning, okay, this is just my opinion, and I apologize, but I think that they make a lot of books vanilla. They take out the really meaningful, impactful undertones, and they make them more acceptable to everyone. And I think that you receive a less passionate read that way. And there are things that I'm not willing to change. Here's a good example. You read Have No Shame. My literary agent wanted me to rewrite Have No Shame. Kristen, you remember this, I'm sure. He wanted me to rewrite Have No Shame to be completely active. And I felt like a lot of that book had to go on in Allison's head. This is her coming of age, and this is her accepting who she is and what she believes in and going through that transition. And I rewrote the first 50 pages, and I sent it to Kristen, and I said, I'll do whatever you think readers are going to like best, but, you know, my gut tells me to stick with the way that I wrote it the first time. And thank God Kristen said, I don't feel it with this. You know, you've got to stick with the way that you wrote it. But that's a good example. I mean, I can't imagine that Have No Shame would have done as well, or that people would enjoy it as much, you know, if it had been turned into a different type of book.
And we were right. It hit the New York Times list. It hit the USA Today list. We were right.
Yeah. And I get more comments about Have No Shame. Well, now Love and Bloom gets comments every day now, I think, because there are so many. But out of my standalone books, Have No Shame gets the most comments, and really strong, vehement comments of more people, more rather than less people, feel like this is a book that will make a meaningful impact once it hits the right people, you know, that it needs to be out there. And that's what I write for. You know, you want your stories to be not just be enjoyed, but for me, with a story like Have No Shame, I want it to hit home. I want it to have an impact. I want people to read it, and then when they walk away from it, still think about what happened, so that part of our past isn't always forgotten. You know, I think to some people, to some young people, it never existed. You know, it's very easy in their online world to forget about what happened in the real world and how we got where we are. So to me, that having that passionate read is everything.
And are you finding young adults reading it too? Are you finding?
Yeah. I get, in fact, some of my son's friends email me after they've read it, and they're, you know, 14 years old, 15 years old, 13 years old, and I like that. You know, we didn't go overboard with any sexual undertones and that kind of thing in that book, so I don't feel like it's inappropriate. And most of the younger people who are reading it, when they get back in touch with me, they say they've learned about it in school, but it's never hit home. You know, it's never had the impact on them that the book had, which is interesting, but, you know, it's being told from a kid they're just a few years older than them. So I think it's much more easily relatable.
Yeah, and that really speaks again to Allison, how real she feels, and how, I mean, we can all relate to her, even though what she's going through might not be something we can relate to.
Yeah, I agree.
Ladies, do you have any last questions for Melissa, or anyone out there watching? You can type in your questions.
I think we're good. It's great.
This was fun.
It was wonderful,
Nice to
Melissa.
meet
We
all of you.
loved
Yeah.
having this.
Loved it.
The first time in 27 years we've done anything like this. So.
Oh, wow. I'm so honored, and oh, excuse me, just for 1 second, I'm so sorry. Let me just That's my husband. He's lecturing tonight, so he was on his way back from a lecture. But I've had a lot of fun. I'm so honored that your group and that Kristen and Daily, is it Daily Basics? The Daily Basics is a group.
Yep.
That all of you have asked me to come on. I mean, I really enjoy it, and I thank you. And anytime that you want to chat about a book, I am always happy to do it.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Cindy, for putting this together for us.
Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And so everyone knows, Melissa will be joining us tomorrow, too, on the Shelf Pleasure radio show, so you can keep an eye out for that.
So what I'm going to do is I'm going to email you the Shelf Pleasure radio show link, and every Wednesday at 4 o'clock, I think, our time, right? Or is that your time?
4 o'clock my time, 7
Okay.
o'clock your time.
7 o'clock our time. So you can listen to that, and they've got great content, great questions. And it's a
Jackie
lot
Collins talked to us. We've been having so much fun.
it's really, really good. Melissa, thank you so much for doing this. I really appreciate it. And you're our first author, our premiere event.
I'm so honored.
Thank you so much.
And I have to tell you something very funny before I go. Kristen, I have to tell you something very funny. I got 2 emails today from people who said that when they read the name of the groups that were holding this, they read it as self-pleasure, not self-pleasure.
That's okay. As long as people are talking about us, we don't care.
I know. I got to kick out of that.
And make sure you check out Melissa's website and follow her on Twitter. There are so many great books that she has. All sorts of genres for you to read. It's a lot of fun.
Thank you so much, you guys. It's really great to talk to you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.
Cindy, bye.
Bye.